Previously on agentpalmer.com, more promises from Palmer. Evil Genius is a textbook example of a fun thriller, and I'm still waiting on confirmation from my previous guest that she's on vacation, which I'm optimistically taking to mean she's on vacation. This is the Palmer Files, episode 113, featuring my good friend, Jason Zapata, and both of our younger selves. We listen to an old conversation, which you will also hear with us, and then we reconvene on the mics to talk about music, friendship, and a whole lot more. Are you ready? Let's do the show. Hello and welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stershik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 113th episode is Jason Zapata, who's here with me on this show because I resurrected an old conversation we had before the turn of the millennium, and I decided it would be great to listen to it with him and record what happens next. That is what this is. I discovered this conversation, which I did know existed, while converting all of my old cassette tapes to digital because I only had one cassette player left and I felt the need to preserve whatever was on all of those tapes. I found some tracks laid down by my friends, an early album release from a band I joined for a cup of coffee in high school, but I also found this conversation. So that's what you are about to hear. I have since attempted to clean up the audio as best I could from the original conversation so that it is as clear as possible, since the rest of the conversation from the present day is launched from that conversation. That's it. That is what is in store for you. But first, remember that if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterwards, you can find all contact information for myself and for my guest, Jason Zapata, in the show notes. There you can find more information about my guest, Jason's work, at jasonzapata.com. Don't forget you can see all of my ratings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Say something, my man.
Hello!
Not that loud. You don't have to do that. I don't know. We'll see. Music discussion part 1. Guns N' Roses.
Your view on the breakup.
The breakup. Okay, let's see. Well, it's not entirely one party's fault. It can't be, because if it was, then one of them would have been kicked out of the band, and the other one would have been like, "Hey, I want to own Guns N' Roses, and I'll take everybody else in." It's like a ego
Ownership
trip
thing.
Yeah.
All right.
So it wasn't an ownership, and it had nothing to do with money. And in the interview I just read about with that empty that he did with Kurt Loder, he's talking about more and more about how they broke up or what strayed them apart.
What led to it?
And it was more like Axl doesn't hate all kinds of music. He likes most kinds of music. So everybody else wanted to do a hard rock album, and you wanted to explore some different things, and that's kind of where it kind of left. But the other thing was, he wasn't having fun. That's what he said. I think that's because he lost out. And I was talking about how Axl and Slash battled on in terms of ego trips, who was more with the band. And it's obvious that Axl had more with the
people. He's like the people.
He's like the people guy. And I mean, they were both fighting back and forth for that.
Yeah, it was, Slash was guitar solos, and Axl with the vocals.
Yeah, and obviously went with the vocals. I mean, you could have very well gone with Slash. I mean, right now his band is it's an underground thing, and I hope he breaks out because he deserves to sell out arenas and shit. But I think they were battling back and forth, and Axl did win, because there are some solos like towards the later end of the thing, like when you listen to the live album and stuff, that he's just not putting it all into it, because in terms of a battle for back and forth, he like kind of lost. But there are some really good solos from like the mid, like I'd say 90, not like 94, like the end, like the total end, but around 90, when they were both like still trying to be on top of each other, like that, those solos, those vocals, like they were put out there. They were like, boom, here it is.
Yeah.
You love me more, you know?
Well, I like Use Your Illusions #1. I mean, you could tell like in November Rain. I mean, Slash had 2 awesome solos in that.
Don't
series.
Cry too.
Yeah.
And they covered some good shit.
Yeah.
Too. I mean, like Live and Let Die. I mean, come on, that's like the best version of that song. But they should I think you can tell Slash lost only because Axl was trying like for 3.5+ years or something to get him back, and like he just gave up. Like the only reason he wouldn't go back is because his pride was hurt, you know. And he won't really talk about Guns N' Roses. I mean, I've been online, I've searched, and he won't make really any comments about it. And from my understanding, Slash's Snake Pit is where Guns N' Roses is now. I mean, Axl's off doing his theme. He's got the name, but the music wise, it's with Slash's Snake Pit. And in all seriousness, I think like he almost had the entire Guns N' Roses lineup on Slash's Snake Pit, and Axl was gonna help out. But Slash wanted it this way, and he didn't want it Axl's way, or he didn't want Axl to help improve it or change it. And that's why Axl left. And Duff left too, but Duff played with him for a while, and Duff and him are still playing and stuff.
That's cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know Axl tried to help out.
Yeah, I guess he wanted to do vocals or he was invited to, and it just didn't work out because like,
the ego thing. Yeah. Lead singer syndrome?
Kind of. It's like, I mean, like Steven and Joe, they did their whole I mean, Joe went off and did his thing, and it's kind of almost the same situation, only they actually realized how much they needed each other, which is why they came back. And those 3 albums that they made afterwards, the big ones, Pump, Permanent Vacation, and Get a Grip, they were their biggest sellers, or the ones that really made it in the pop culture and like the mainstream. But I mean, like those two really, their egos aren't as dependent on each other, probably because they didn't have as long as a career. Like Aerosmith, those two, they were the Toxic Twins, yes, but they had like 12 albums together before they even started to stray apart.
Yeah, but can it be a Guns N' Roses without Slash?
No, can it be a Guns N' Roses without Axl? It is a Guns N' Roses without. I mean, it isn't Guns N' Roses without Slash, but it kind of is without Axl. I mean, because lyrically, there are people that can measure up to him. I mean, well, not necessarily lyrically. Lyrically, you can come close, and you could almost touch him. And voice-wise, you can touch him. Because, I mean, voice-wise, it's just, you know, if you have it or not. But, I mean, what's there is it's the music more so than the lyrics, because most people are looking for Slash. I mean, they're looking for Axl, and he did steal the limelight, but everybody depended on Slash, which is why even Axl says if you want to hear an old Guns N' Roses thing, you go to Slash's Snake Pit, because that's where the sound is. I mean, Axl's trying a new melting pot. He's got some computer stuff. He's got some electronic in the new album. It comes out in early 2000.
So what you're saying was that Axl was like, you know, the headliner, but Slash was the backbone to the band.
Yeah. And the rest were kind of like great musicians, but I mean, they did their own thing. They stood out in individual songs and little things like that. Like, I mean, there's solos. I mean, there's little things.
There were components, but they weren't the major components.
They were kind of major components, but the ultimate components were
Slash.
Yeah. And like even like they each come out like in Patience. You know, rhythm guitar comes out. In Sweet Child of Mine, the bass solo at the beginning comes out. I mean, they all got their say to a point. But those two are the main components. Mm-hmm. And in any band that's got, you know, 2 guitar, like Guns N' Roses was an '80s metal band. I mean, they had two guitars, lead and rhythm. They had a bassist, they had a drummer, they had a lead singer who didn't play anything unless he really wanted to, and they had a keyboardist.
Yeah.
That was the main band. There were 6. Aerosmith did it without a main keyboardist. I mean, now they travel with one, but they didn't have they pick one up or they've got one that they need. They never had a permanent member. I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot between those two bands, Aerosmith and Guns N' Roses, because Guns N' Roses came because they did Mamakin, and I mean, they both worked out of nothing basically. Only Aerosmith hit it on the East Coast and Guns did it on the West Coast.
You think this new Guns N' Roses is gonna be somewhat of a comparison to the old?
The only thing you'll be able to compare it to is Slash's Snake Pit, because basically when you listen to it, that's where the Guns sound is. Right now, the Guns sound is with Slash's Snake Pit. I mean, because he's still got kind of control and everybody follows his lead because he's the main guy. So, I mean, lyrically, it'll be, same old Axl. He'll have the voice and it's just he's got the same type of lineup, but it's different influences on the band, and he's trying to get, new influences. He's trying to make it a melting pot, and he's. I mean, oh my God, I haven't heard it, but from all the things I've read about it, it was hard and metal, and it was more, not Metallica, but even a little harder maybe. And that's not really where Guns N' Roses is. I mean, they did a song or two like that on Use Your Illusion. There's that one song. It's you want to step into my world. It's a psycho blah. And it's just extremely hard. I think that's where it came from, kind of. But he's trying new things.
He wanted to be involved in the Seattle movement.
Yeah, he liked the Seattle movement, actually. He said that. He said he liked the Seattle movement. Not many other in the band did. And I don't blame him because that was the end. I mean, they may have survived, but that was the end of all the other hair bands, metal,
the
stuff.
80s hype kind of music.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. It's still alive. I mean, Poison, Rat, Great White, LA Guns, Def Leppard. They're all retouring and still selling out and stuff.
They were there, but they shrunk down a little to allow the new music to come.
Well, they didn't necessarily shrink down. They kind of more got pushed out of the way, I think.
Yeah.
It's move out, here we come.
Uh-huh.
And that movement died with Kurt, though. When Kurt died, that movement went. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that movement would have stayed alive.
The whole grunge thing.
Yeah, I think that would have died out eventually, but I mean, it died a little faster. And nobody's still around from it. Because the grunge turned into alternative. That's what they were classifying as alternative, and you don't hear any of that now. It's all rap rock, a new pretty face.
Oh, the teeny boppers. Don't get me started on teeny boppers. Teeny boppers suck.
Yeah, they do. One of these days, I don't know, Joey McIntyre's trying to make a comeback.
Oh God! New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, he's never gonna outlive that. I mean, it's okay, yes, you're still a new kid, man. You're always gonna be a new kid. I don't care if you can write your own music or not. You're still a new kid, man.
You're fucked for life, pal.
Yeah. It's you may always have a hot chick that wants to fuck you, but in the music business, you will never be taken seriously. It's your own damn fault, making all that goddamn money up with cheap sluts. Oh, what?
King of Pop, is he dead? Michael Jackson?
Oh, I don't know. I think so. I mean, what he did in the past is there, and then he made weak attempts at trying to make a new Thriller. And once he hit Thriller, that was the peak. He'll never be able to top that again.
Yeah.
And, back to Guns N' Roses for a second.
Sure.
Axl re-recorded Appetite with all the new members.
Really?
With the new New lineup.
Why would he do that?
I don't know, but I think he's saying so. I think he's got 70 songs recorded. I mean, he's got enough, and plus he's got the Appetite re-recorded. I think what he wants to do is he's gonna release Chinese Democracy, and I'm not sure if that'll contain any of the old songs. And it doesn't contain any old songs. Never mind, let me rephrase that, because I saw the song. But after he does that, if it doesn't reestablish Guns N' Roses as a new, different lineup, but still same old thing, he'll re-release it because he said it's got the same energy. And if it's got the same energy, it'll sell to, not necessarily, it'll sell on name to the hardcore Guns N' Roses fan. And it'll either disappoint or...
Yeah, but why do it? That's the whole reason. I mean,
just to show people that, I mean, it's not necessarily selling out because they can still rock and have the same energy.
but want to have a different sound with all the new musicians?
Not necessarily. I mean, he said, and Axl does have a pretty high. He's one of those guys that's got like one of those. He's like self-critical. And in order to redo that old Guns N' Roses stuff, you have to live up to what they did, or at least play up to their standards. So I think that's what he was doing. Like whether he releases it or not, he still knows that they have recorded it and they're up to the standards of the old Guns N' Roses.
That's why it took 8 years to finally come out now.
No, it's only been 6. But I mean, he's just been working on the album. He hasn't really. And working on the album, finding musicians. He hasn't really been doing anything. He hasn't seen any shows. I mean, he's been secluded.
So why did Slash manage to get a band started so much?
Because Slash needed music, and Slash knows what to do and how to do it, and he's Slash. Come on now, he's not going to disappear. Because I mean, no matter what happens with the new Guns N' Roses album, and if Slash never makes it in the mainstream, and if Guns N' Roses fails and Axl and all that stuff, Slash will always be looked to by a guitarist.
He has his legacy secured.
Yeah, his legacy is secured. I mean, it's not going anywhere. Nothing left.
Nah, I think I'm done.
Okay.
All right, sir. So we literally, like, as everybody else just heard it, you and I just heard it, and I have questions, so many questions. Like, first of all, you and I had so many music discussions. So many. Why is that the one that we recorded? And why did we only record one?
I don't think most people think to save conversations for prosperity, which is kind of weird because now with the technology that we have, it's a little bit easier to do that type of thing. So,
yeah, you and I mean, the sound's bad because you and I are sharing one mic off of my Tascam Porta studio. So like,
yeah,
it's whatever it is. So I don't have a date on this. I'm going to guess 99. I'm going to guess it's before the millennium.
Yeah, easily. So it's got to be 98, 99.
Somewhere in
there. Yeah.
I know where we recorded it, which helps a little bit.
Yeah, it was your third floor bedroom in the old house by the library.
Yep, we're still in high school. Let's start from the very beginning. What's with the voice? I do a voice.
You sound like Jay from Clerks. What's his name?
Why?
From Jay and Silent
Why?
Bob.
And it's only for a little bit. Like I go.
No,
I
disagree. No, for the majority of that, you sound like freaking Jay from Clerks.
Which is funny. And here's the thing.
Hysterical.
So people listening are going to be like, well, it's because he was high. But you and I never.
No, we never
smoked.
We never
that was not something we did. So I know it's not that. I don't know why I'm putting on a voice. I have no idea. None.
I know this sounds bad, but I'm struggling to think back that far and remember like if that's like how you usually spoke.
I don't think so, because when you listen, like as I get into it, and we're gonna get into the.
I'll be honest. I'm not sure either way, but I just thought it was hysterical because
Yeah.
listening to it now, I'm like, dear God.
But I will say,
Yeah.
I don't know what article I'm talking about. And look, since then, I've read the unauthorized biography of Axl. I've read 2 of Duff's books. I've read Slash's book.
A lot more information.
I have a lot more
been-
information.
yes.
And also, what's funny is it sounds like I'm taking Axl's side in that whole conversation. And I think I'm trying to be an optimist. And I was very much a big Snake Pit fan, which you and I actually saw him open up for AC/DC.
Yes, we did.
And then in the last
I completely forgot about that,
Yeah.
by the way.
and then
Wow.
and then in like, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago when I read Duff's first book, then I started kind of getting into Duff, who is now my favorite. I don't know. I mean, since then, aside from what I've consumed, like the list goes on, right? So Snake Pit, sure, absolutely. Then Velvet Revolver happens, and then eventually Chinese Democracy finally gets.
Didn't come out in 2000.
No, it did
So
not.
it certainly did not come out in 2000. That was I was trying so hard not to laugh out loud when you said that. I was like, oh well, that estimate was way off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking back at that, the years between that conversation and now, what happened to those musicians and those bands, it's pretty wild. You know, Scott Weiland gets himself killed, you know, and that was another stake in the heart of grunge music. So
Yeah, I'll tell you this,
grunge
man.
wasn't dead. It was hurting bad, but it wasn't dead. But when you look at it now, they're all dead. Freaking Chris Cornell, dead.
I mean, look, a lot of them are, but
Yeah.
but I will argue in hindsight, because based on the time frame I think this was recorded, Foo Fighters does exist in
Yeah.
the world, and I think that Foo Fighters is a lot more hard rock than grunge. I know there's still people that are going to say like, "Come on, it's grunge," but it's not. It's. I don't see it as, I see it as hard rock, and I definitely think there's a difference between the two. That's not.
It may not be the right term, but I would dare say they're a little bit more. They're a little too. Again, not probably the right phrase, but the best one I can think of. A little too poppy to be grunge would be the way I would kind of couch that.
I think I might use polished. It's a little bit.
I don't
it's-
say polished.
I would, because it's not as down a half step, down a whole. It's not as low. It's a little bit higher in the frequency and all that stuff. But I do think that if grunge doesn't die with Kurt, it's definitely the high point. It starts going downhill the moment
great.
he's gone.
Yeah, yes, certainly.
There's a piece of this of history that we're sharing that I love, and that is that I think throughout our friendship there have been times for both of us, and in this scenario, in what everybody and you and I have just heard, it's me talking to you, but I think as friends we have just been sounding boards for each other over the years. This is an example of me basically talking your ear off, but like the tables have been turned many, many times. And I think that that's healthy. There is, because people are listening to this going like, man, that he just talks and Zapata just listens. It's not always the case. Sometimes it's reversed. It's just, we have an example of this that goes back, as we're sitting here now, over 2 decades of like, this is a thing.
Yeah.
This is what we did.
It's good to run an idea by someone and to see what their take is on it, and then kind of go over the differences. I think that we were both kind of on separate kind of wavelengths with like between Axl and Slash.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that it's the front man is pretty much the end all be all of a band. Like once the front man kind of goes to separate, it's usually that's acquaintance for that act.
I mean, since then, Queen's been resurrected without. I mean, look, you can argue. I can see your face. Nobody else can see his face, but he's pulling a face. Okay, everybody needs to know he's pulling a face. But you can't argue with the fact that they are now successfully touring. They aren't creating new music, but they are successfully touring.
Yeah.
And look, Guns N' Roses is successfully touring again too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're kind of shadows of their former selves, but it's, yeah,
yeah.
But good on them. Good on them.
Age comes for us all, man.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, pot kettle. But that's funny that you mentioned that. Kind of brief aside, when I was a couple weekends back, when I was down in Scranton to go see the concert, Pantera is playing. Pantera's been around for ages now. They haven't been touring as much lately because obviously the losses of Vinny and Dime.
Yeah.
But with Zach Wilde stepping in for lead guitar, them playing, it's a completely different experience. Now you still have the front man, which is an interesting wrinkle to that dynamic. So it still sounds like Pantera, but it has that weird kind of tweak to it with Zach Wilde on the electric guitar. And then the funny thing is, it all comes around to like that age again. And Phil is on the stage. He goes, "Man, like you 90s kids did a good job raising your children. I see a lot of young people in the audience." I was like, yeah, God damn it. It is a generational thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, I thought that was very interesting.
I mean, otherwise it's dead.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise Guns N' Roses is dead with, I mean, for all my talking about the Snake Pit, and then, Duff had some albums and Izzy put out some albums and all that stuff, and ignoring Chinese Democracy and what might come out in the future. Rumor is they're recording again, but like all that music is just frozen in time if they and almost lost. You got to remember, there is a part of all of us that will always listen to our high school and college music. You might be forward thinking enough and open enough to take in as much new music as possible. I am not that guy. I take in about 2% new music. And at that, it's 2% new music new to me, not necessarily new music. For the most part, my listening habits go from 1960s up through this conversation before the millennium. Okay? And that's just where my stuff is. However, it stays with me if I don't pass it along to my kids, my friends, people whatever. And so there is a part of it that's that. I also think that touring, whether we like it or not, social media, seeing stuff on TikTok and being able to be a trend or whatever, has given some of these older bands and older music in general a new life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. It's the what's the word I'm looking for?
It's the commoditization of music in a way where like it's a commodity in a sense where it can now be consumed by people that aren't necessarily looking to consume it.
Yeah. And
let's be real, a lot of the music from our era, like, yeah, he might have been on stage in front of all these us and people our age that have kids and it's been like, oh, you 90s kids did really well. But you know what else? We've seen a lot of car commercials with music from our high school years of late.
That's kind of...
And it's
Yeah, I think that's the issue with the current climate that we have. I think that in lieu of, maybe not talent would be the right word, creativity, we've leaned very heavily on nostalgia.
Sure.
And nostalgia,
powerful drug, man. Powerful drug.
It's doing a lot of heavy lifting lately.
Powerful drug. Powerful drug.
Yes, it is. And I think, I don't know. I think also going back to your point about social media, I think because of the way trending and how social media works, it's kind of engineered in a certain way where those types of random discoveries that you would have like in the radio store or the record shop or wherever you would just go to pick up a random CD or vinyl, you don't have those encounters as frequently. Now, if you work at it and you try to just randomize your playlist or do something like that, yeah, you may luck out and find a gem that
I don't
way.
see. I don't think so. I think most of the time, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, these are all platforms designed to keep you happy. And I think that whatever algorithm they're using is more likely to give you a deep. Look. I mean, that conversation proves it, right? I'm a fan of Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith. Okay, none of that's a surprise to anybody. There are a lot of other bands too, but those bands, I am more likely to get a deep cut off of like GNR Spaghetti Incident or like one of like Aerosmith Draw the Line or maybe Gems or Night in the Ruts than I am a band I've never heard of. And as an example, a few weeks ago, actually a couple months ago, I went through all my vinyl and I was listening to it as I was going through it. A lot of it was hand-me-downs and I just collected it. I got rid of a bunch of it, but in doing that, I listened to and I introduced you to Good Rats.
Yes.
All right. Well, Good Rats, by the way, as a fan of just saying Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith, Good Rats is in that vein of like that 70s rock. Like it has the same kind of roots as Aerosmith does, and Aerosmith is a direct correlation to Guns N' Roses. Good Rats is a band I was probably always going to love. It was never suggested
appear
to
on
me. It would never going to. And it's one of those things where if we talked to a record store person, you know what I mean? If we walked into a record store and I said, hey, what do you got for somebody who likes this? They might. You know, I happenstanced into Good Rats. They might actually know, like, oh, well, have you ever heard of Good Rats? And I think there's a thing where a human is going to be able to say, like, it's not quite the same, but it's kind of in that valley.
Yeah, if you have a music nut, and everyone has one in their group, and
or different ones.
Yeah, and that's how our friend group works as well. I know Sean is very much his tastes are very funny, but he's still out there trying to find new hard rock, heavy metal, and he'll post things up in the chat. And sometimes it's, a couple of us will roll our eyes because it's one of those bands that have like 5 letters in their letters in their name. It's like my dark something or King.
It's an acronym.
Yeah, it's
an
just
acronym.
the title goes on for forever.
Well, and I have Chris for that because I mean, doing the music show helps him, and then as my friend, because I'm not on the show that much, he's like, hey, by the way, you'd probably like this, and we all look. You're right. We all have those people.
Yeah.
But if you just listen to Spotify, even if you say like the radio based on this or that or the other, very rarely are you going to get that oddball that you're not expecting. Most likely you'll get that, oh, I remember that song, not, oh, I've never heard this. This is amazing. One of those two things you are definitely going to happen. And the others, probably not unless you talk to a human. Dude, I first of all, I want to thank you. Because I don't know what possessed us to turn the mics on 20-ish years ago. I really don't. But I'm so glad we have that. And I've been talking about this for years. Now, recently, I've been, as stated, going through stuff. And I went and I digitally converted all of my old cassette tapes, especially some from the Porta Studio. And I've listened to some music I created back then, too. I for a guy who then eventually 4 years later, give or take from this, did a senior project that was audio based. The fact that I only have one recorded conversation from back then is kind of amazing, but I want to thank you because like you might be one of the few people from back then of that time that would have taken the time to sit down and record with me.
Goes without saying, bro. I think it's trippy hearing our younger selves. Joey McIntyre. Joey freaking McIntyre. Well, we can confirm that that comeback never happened. So that thankfully did die. Michael Jackson, though, that was a bit of a prophecy there that came true after the fact, because as everyone knows, he did die afterwards. But
but the music career, like, I don't see,
Yeah.
like, people will talk about the comebacks since that.
he was never the same. He was never the king of pop again.
No.
And there's people have many different takes on that. I know there's actually a goofy commentator that I follow named Razorfist. He did a multiple video essay about Michael Jackson and how he feels for the most part he was pretty much villainized, and a lot of the accusations regarding him were false. I don't have a dog in that fight, but
but it goes to an art versus artist issue.
And that's very prevalent right now.
And you and I have had this conversation for years, because I've stated, like, I may not like the way Woody Allen lives his life, but I love his writing, and I think his comedy's hilarious. And I know that it's very hard for some people to separate those two, but by the same token, and this is always my answer, right? If you put a magnifying glass
to anyone.
on anyone,
yeah, of course,
like, I would like to consider myself a genuinely decent person, but I'm sure I'm an ass sometimes. I'm talking to the person who probably has called me an ass more than anyone in the history of the world.
Hey, right back at you. Right back at you.
But, like, the amount of things you're going to have to stop watching, listening to, whatever, because you're like, oh, I don't like that guy personally. That's fine, but you can like the art. Like, that's a pretty picture. Like, and I've talked about it in sports too. Like, all of the heroes of the 30s, 40s, and 50s were horrible people.
Oh yeah, Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth. Yeah, you go on and on.
But there was an unwritten rule among sports reporters that we weren't going to talk about what happened off the field. We just weren't. And some of that stuff has come out since then. But for the most part, imagine that those guys and what they were, the womanizing and the drinking, was actually being reported. And that's basically what's happening now.
Yeah, we're very, some of us are very puritanical, and the zealot never stops with the cleansing of his own house. He must go out and cleanse other homes. He must cleanse the world and make sure that the heretic is put to the flame. But
then you're left sitting there watching nothing on TV because it was all created by people of ill repute, and you can't listen to anything because it was all recorded by people of ill repute, and you can't read any books because it was all written by, people of ill repute. Like, I mean, seriously, at that point, you go for a walk, and hope that the path you're walking upon wasn't paved by a person of ill repute. Like, I'm sorry, like, in order to keep up that kind of a lifestyle, it's hard. And
not only that, it's like that. It's no longer a functioning culture. Like, when it gets to that extent, you where you can't appreciate something or even have like simple discourse about it without it becoming this
yelling match. It's just a yelling match, man.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's a very odd time, and I would say, I think it's coming. I do think it's coming to an end. I think that when you look at some of the things that have happened previously, writer's strike that happened last time was over much quicker. I think now people are very skeptical about what's happening culturally, and they're not rushing to defense of some things as quickly as they used to.
I disagree. I disagree completely. I think your premise might be okay, but the reason they're not is because they don't care. I think people have stopped caring. The fervent, oh, did you hear about? Nobody cares. Like, we've been so inundated by news, quote unquote, because everything's breaking, everything's up to date, nothing's ever fully, like, we get breaking news theories so often we mistake them for breaking news.
Yeah.
And so we are so desensitized that the average person, and I'm not picking on anyone when I say this, The average person reads the headline, and that's good enough.
Well, here's the
And the
thing, and
reason-
it's the old adage. It's like a lie has gone around the world before the truth has even put its pants on.
But the reason that people only read the headline is because tomorrow there will be a contradicting headline. So why read the rest of the words?
No, I think it's not that. I think it's attention span. Like everything is engineered right now due to our deteriorated attention spans.
Some of us
YouTube Shorts, TikTok. We know people who are addicted to TikTok. Won't name names, but all this is very intentional to have people's attention spans limited.
It's not about limiting. No. See, I think you're wrong.
I disagree completely.
I think you're wrong. I think what you're forgetting is we have created a scenario where in order to make money, you have to sell ads. And the best way to sell ads is to put it in front of content. And the best way to get more ads in front of more people is to just make more content. And since they can only watch one 30-minute program with 2 ad breaks with 6 things apiece, but they can watch 24 TikToks, maybe with an ad embedded or maybe just promoted TikToks in that same time span, I can get more bang for my advertising dollar. I think
but
most
either
people
way,
are being played.
Either way, it's creating a habit within people where when they consume art or content, which is
not the same.
Not the same. Thank you. They're not appreciating it or they're not having enough time to digest it properly.
Well, okay, but here's the thing. Okay? You and I have watched some very old movies together, and we still talk about many of them to this day.
Yeah.
And the conversation people heard earlier about music is a conversation that we have often enough, right? It's not Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith all the time, right? Like, we like U2. There are plenty of other bands that we talk about on a regular basis. However, when I read a book, when you read a book, when we read an article, when we watch a documentary, these are the conversations we have. And it changes. So that conversation, had I started it the same way, hey, buddy, let's talk about the breakup, would be a very different conversation. It would be, even if we kept it to another 15 minutes, it'd be very different 15 minutes. And that's fine and that's dandy for us. But I think we are actively trying to consume longer things. We are actively trying to read novels, full-length novels. We are actually trying to write things of substance or create things of substance, or we're trying to. We're making those attempts.
Yeah.
And we try, as we might, to watch television shows and movies, and not necessarily just TikTok and YouTube and Instagram stories and whatever the new thing is. And I think you have to make that conscious decision, because if you don't make that conscious decision, it's going to be made for you.
Well, that's the thing. Again, habit forming, and that's why these algorithms exist. They exist for a reason, to shape and form behavior.
Sure. And
usually not very good behavior. But yeah, I just again, kind of circling back to the artist versus art thing there, like, that's the whole point. Artists have always been on the fringe, on the boundaries of what is acceptable. And I don't understand how it became in vogue to have, these standards, which most people don't apply to themselves, let alone, to an artist. So it's very odd.
It goes back to something that people keep telling me, but I don't know how to articulate. People don't understand. It's not, you don't just sit down and record. A podcast is not just sitting down, hitting record, and then hitting publish. Like, it can be that, but a good one's not like that. And a blog post is not just sitting down and writing words and hitting publish. There's editing involved. Same with poetry and books.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, the average movie, independent or big or otherwise, goes through draft after draft. Even if it's only one writer and it's like an independent feature and it's not a studio film, it still goes to other people and it gets revised and revisited and maybe put on a shelf so you get some space and you come back and you take a look at. Look, successful things take time. And what happens is people go, that looks easy. That looks easy. And maybe all of us, and you are included in this, because I don't think anybody has any idea the hell I put you through.
Oh, and with the editing process.
To get your stuff to publish. But I think we make it seem fun and we make it seem easy. Now, it's easy for us and it's fun for us, but it is by no means actually easy. We make it look easy because we're having fun doing it most of the time. But people don't see me and you talk for 45 minutes with a conversation that starts with, I'm missing a word. You know, they don't, nobody sees that. And we don't talk about that enough, but maybe we should. Maybe we should never tell people a podcast is fun. No, for every minute I record, I spend 3 minutes editing. You know, for every stanza in your book of poetry, there are 15 variations of that have been thrown away.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe we should spend time to really convey the art, the actual factual art.
And that may be more necessary than we think right now, given certain advancements with technology. Expressing,
don't.
Just reinforcing the idea of the human pursuit of this. And,
well, look, you can take your plagiarism engine and do whatever you want with it, but I will tell you this, and I've said it before, and I will say it again. The loudest people for AI are the tech bros reeling from their NFT failures. And I'm guessing that they want you to buy in now before the bottom falls out. Look, as a tool, AI is wonderful. As an actual
and also very inescapable. As
a platform, it is determined to fail. Because it cannot think.
I don't know.
And there is going to look. I'm telling you.
Sadly, I would love to agree, but I don't know.
Look, it's a plagiarism engine. You have to put stuff into it in order to get something out of it, and all it's going to take is somebody to figure out, hey, wait a minute, this seems like a Disney movie, or this seems like a Pixar movie, and for Pixar to ask where they got that script from. What did they feed the monster to get this from it? And all they have to say is, well, maybe we fed it one of your movies. And there will be a lawsuit the likes of which we have.
I don't know.
It will be
game-changing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you... The law would be very interesting on that. I grant you.
It's not written yet. The
this is all... The
government's trying to get ahead of it. And if there's one thing we know, it's the governments are never ahead of anything.
No.
But I will say it's going to be interesting because people are willing to give stuff away. People are willing to give everything away. Hey, by the way, I hope you know that every time you type into Google, they're using that to teach their AI. And every time
you
do this,
you mean in terms of
people okay. We could come out tomorrow and say that every major social media platform is going to take your stuff to train their AI. And guess what? No one is going to stop using it.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I certainly agree with you that people are very liberal and free in terms of the data. They may not be consciously aware that they're giving out.
I think even the stuff they are consciously aware of, they don't care.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. There's some stuff in their minds that it's not
important.
It's not significant enough for them to not utilize a particular app or feature or option on the phone, whatever you may be. I think some people are getting a little bit more savvy with it. I think some people are kind of starting to use other technologies to prevent that type of thing, keep their data safe, keep their interest to themselves. But yeah.
We're not going to solve it.
It's
just not going to get solved tonight, and it's probably not going to get solved soon. I don't know when this episode's going to air. I'll say that right now. But I will tell you this. It won't be solved by the time this comes out.
No. But I think that there will always be that that spectrum of people that are that just don't care, and they'll let themselves get chipped. Like they'll get microchipped. They just don't care because it's the convenience at that point for them. It's simplicity. They're not concerned about those things because they don't feel that those things are even important to them to begin with. And then you have the people way on the other side of the spectrum. They're in a bunker somewhere in, North Dakota preparing for the end of the world. So it's that weird, we're Americans. We're all freaking weird. So that's that spectrum that we have to deal with all that.
Thank goodness for old friends. Seriously, I don't know about any of you listening to this right now, but I am extremely thankful to have an old friend still a part of my life and my projects that I don't have to coerce him in any way to sit down and listen to us from the past and continue the conversation in the present. This is such a remarkable episode if you only consider that the start of this conversation was multiple decades old when we sat down to listen to it together and continue it. Now, as we've stated, we've had these kinds of conversations so often that they're second nature to us. We often disagree, but it's part of what makes our friendship unique. I have other friends who I agree with more often, but I'd much rather argue with Zapata than agree with someone else. Differing points of view challenge and refine our own views. This is why we enjoy each other's company and we collaborate at every possible chance. Getting outside our own echo chambers is underrated and underrecognized. Do it. Thanks for listening to The Palmer Files, episode 113. And now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can find all related ways to contact myself and my guest, Jason Zapata, in the show notes. There you can find more information about my guest's work at jasonzapata.com. The music for this episode was provided by Henno Heitur. Email can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. All right, Jason, you have one final question for me.
Yeah. Who was the keyboardist for Guns N' Roses?
Dizzy Reed.
And on top of that, is there a stigma attached to that particular instrument in rock?
I want to say no. I want to say no because, people might pick on Dizzy Reed for being a member of Guns N' Roses, especially after Appetite, because Use Your Illusion happens and features Dizzy Reed on keyboards heavily, right? However, to my knowledge, and obviously social media probably would have treated it differently, when Axl sits down in his best Elton John during the Use Your Illusion tour, no one's like, oh, he's Elton John. This isn't rock and roll anymore. Or this isn't my hard rock. Or this isn't my, Guns went on tour during the Use Your Illusion tour with Metallica. I still don't think any of those fans were like, screw this guy and his keyboard and his I just don't. I just don't. And I think that it is all about how it is used. Axl used it as a theatrical piece. He really did.
So it's more you're stating that it's more acceptable based off of how it's used.
I think it's how it's used. I really
You don't
do.
think it's just a general kind of, perception of it. I think there is to a certain extent. I do.
I don't think so. But then again, you're asking me.
Yeah.
Okay, you're asking me. I'm a guy who likes music from the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm okay. Like I'm not ever going to be like, I can't play. Like, if there's one thing I lament, it's that I can't play the keys, man. If I could play the ivories, it'd be different, but that's the one I can't play, right? So, I don't think there is. Because I will say this, okay? In an alternate universe where Dizzy Reed doesn't join Guns N' Roses, Axl's just playing a lot more piano during the concert. I really believe that.
I wonder because I would like to have seen it because I think that they would be kind of an interesting bridge to some of the newer stuff.
What?
Like Muse. Like Muse is very instrumental, a lot of piano is
or
is in
synth or keyboard or what have you.
Yeah, so I think, but then again, a lot of people are like, Muse is kind of known for that though. So they kind of like, where they should just be easily categorized as just like hard rock, it's like alt and it's all this other kind of weird.
Stop. 5150 has so much keyboard in it. But did anybody be like, fuck Van Halen? No, they didn't. Right now, might be one of their biggest hits. Like popular hits.
Yeah.
I don't know if it really eclipses Jump, but it might.
And that's with Van Hagar, too.
That's with Van Hagar. But nobody was like, nah, screw them. No, everybody's like, I love 5150. Van Hagar's good. There are plenty of people that will choose Van Hagar or Van Halen, and very few of them will actually say the other one sucks. It's just their preference of the two.
Yeah, so I would say this. And again, I'm posing questions. I'm not, stating preferences.
Is anybody
so
being like,
I
I fucking hate Bohemian Rhapsody. There's too much piano in it.
Yeah.
No, that's not a thing people say.
Yes, but I think, again, don't mistake what I'm trying to say here. I think that those are very iconic songs. So I think in terms of like modern times, modern usage of that particular
I think it's there. I think it truly is there. And I will argue that especially musicians like Taylor Swift.
Oh God. Yeah.
Probably no. Hear me. I at some point I will listen to Taylor Swift. It's just not I've listened to whatever I've consumed through the ether, but I would argue that every single one of her songs is probably applicable as an acoustic version or a piano version just by itself, because she seems like the kind of person who's writing it musically for whatever. And she, every once in a while on like a social media, you'll see like, oh, she did what you would call it on the piano or an acoustic version of this. I think if you write good music, the instrument is almost secondary, and I mean that generally speaking.
Yeah,
if you write good music, the instrument is secondary. So I also think it depends on that. But I also would say it depends on...
It's very funny we got onto this subject, and this may be one of the longest last question segments we've ever had here. So we're gonna drag this out a little bit longer because as a joke that's kind of been an ongoing gag amongst our group of friends has been me being converted to a Tay Swift fan. So during the recent get together we had, I joked that we should throw a lot of Taylor Swift onto the group playlist. So, and just for context here, these are all metalheads, hard rock guys, grunge guys. We've gone to God knows how many shows, Theater of the Living Arts, Electric Factory, major arenas, Mayhem Visceral, Extreme Steel, etc. Paint a picture here. So, we're all sitting down listening to this playlist, right? And suddenly Karma by Taylor Swift comes on. And it's hysterical because the guys didn't expect it. What ended up happening, Sean, who was there, had snuck it onto the playlist. So it's that literal record scratch moment. But let me say this. The joke has gone on. So now that Kyle's wife now sends me Taylor Swift stuff in the group chat, and she has me listen to it, and I give my honest critique of it. So I will say this: the most recent song, I love this because again it's funny, and I don't mind taking a little shot here on this. But there was a duet that she did on a song called "Exile." I don't know who the guy is who's singing with her, but there's some legitimate talent there, man, and it's again very impressive usage of the piano.
Well, so I will argue, that all of those guys have children.
Yes.
And some of them have daughters. It is inescapable for them. Now,
poor Kyle. Yeah. Maybe not Sean, but Kyle.
I'm just saying it's inescapable. Yeah. And I believe that perhaps as the generation, well, 2 generations on, the people who are in high school now, the people that grew up with Taylor Swift, is also the same generation that doesn't really care about gender as much, or gender roles is what I'll say. And so liking a band like Metallica and T-Swift is not a contradiction to them. And I think what you will find is that generation, the T-Swift fans, probably like a greater swath of genres of music than we did. And you and I like to think of ourselves as fairly open musically, but you know what? If I'm being honest, that generation that has made Metallica a number one hit because of Stranger Things, and also puts T-Swift on the top of the charts, like, I believe that they are more accepting of just anything that's quality, period.
I agree. And again, I also think that's due to algorithm making those types of songs and that type of, anything that's grossly popular available to them. Because here's the thing, like, who are the big acts that are touring right now? It's Metallica and Taylor Swift, which is crazy when you think about it.
Guns N' Roses is still touring. Foo Fighters is still touring.
They're still touring,
touring.
But in terms of like the size of the audience and the market share and the influence that's out there right now, like, those 2 acts are, like, bar none, huge. So it's, like I said, it proves your point right.
I think that our closed circle is the reason you include Metallica there.
No, not at all.
The
M72, I think it's the M72 tour that's out right now. It's been a monster tour, man.
It's been a monster tour for them, sure, but I think it pales in comparison. And I think there are plenty of acts that we don't pay attention to.
Oh, like, are they comparing the two? Like, oh no, of course
there's
not.
There's so much in between there. I just feel we are missing. I'm just saying.
No,
but
I'm not going to make that comparison, dude.
But I'm to the original. No, more keys the better. I don't care.
Yeah,
as long as it sounds good. Bring it down, man. Bring it down. You can dance to this shit.
Dude, I'm fine with a good jig.